Hello, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel Megan Chan Vlogs. So in today's video we're going to be talking about how to travel whilst still being a doctor. So first of all, you may notice two things. One, I've had my hair cut and I've also had my eyebrows done today in preparation for going away, so they're a little bit dark, they're a little bit red. But also I've changed the intro to my channel, so this is because I'm wanting to change the perspective slightly. I'll still be making travel content and everything related to that, but I also wanted to have a bit of a slant on it of how to travel if you're a doctor. So a disclaimer at the beginning, my information is based on UK trained medics who are from the UK as well, and so aren't on any sort of visa, and this is also all taken from my experience, and other people may have different experiences. So what I'm going to talk about in the video is the basics of medical training in the UK, what I did as training and what I've done so far as a doctor, and then how I managed to travel alongside this. So I've taken this diagram from a website which I will link below, and it goes through how medical training works in the UK. I'll move slightly to the side so that I can input it here when I'm editing. So you start off with either 4, 5 or 6 years of medical school. So if you're graduate entry, they're 4-year degrees. If you're doing normal undergrad entries, they are 5 years. And if you're doing an intercalated undergraduate, or if you're doing an access to medicine course or a foundation year, they are 6 years long. So you've got your up to 6 years of medical school. Then when you graduate medical school, you do 2 foundation years. So everyone does these 2 foundation years, and you rotate around different specialties in largely two different hospitals. So they are your foundation year 1 and foundation year 2 years. So you might also have heard people called house officers and senior house officers. So those are the old terms but are still used sometimes. So a house officer is F1 and a senior house officer is F2. After F2, you can then specialise in any area that you want to. So you can do run-through specialist training like GP, that is 3 years, or PEDS or obs and gynae, or some surgical specialties are also run-through. So you do specialty trainee, so ST, and it's usually 1 to 8 apart from GP. So after F2, you do another 8 years of training and then you're a consultant. If you want to do medical training or other surgical training, you do 3 years of core training, although it's called internal medical training now. And then from there, you then apply to be a registrar in whichever specialty you want to go into. So for example, if you want to be a medical trainee, you would do F1, F2, IMT 1, 2 and 3, and then you might apply to be a registrar in cardiology, and then you do your registrar years in cardiology. After that, you then do some more exams.
There's exams all the way along as well.
But you do more exams and then you become a consultant. So a consultant is when you are no longer a junior doctor. So either a consultant or a GP is no longer a junior doctor. So that's like a brief overview of the medical training system in the UK. It's long. It is definitely long. So my training, so I graduated in 2014, so I did 5 years of an undergraduate medical degree. I then did my F1 and my F2 years like a normal person, and then I took an F3 year. So I didn't mention like years out in the medical training, but quite a few people do something called an F3, which it's not a training post, but it's a year that people may take out to go traveling or to just have a rest, or decide what they want to do with their lives before applying for something past F2. So I personally did an F3, 4 and 5, but during this time I worked and I travelled. So it was in 2016 that I took my F3 year, and at that time there were quite a few locum jobs. Locum jobs are slightly harder to come by now and rates have changed, but there were a lot more locum posts then, largely because only half of my year actually applied for medical training, like in 2016. I applied for any sort of like specialist training. So there were a lot of unfilled posts.
So
I used to work for like 3 months and then travel for a month, and work for 3 months and travel for a month. And then I took up a trust grade post. So this was like similar level to like core medical training, or IMT as they call it now. And I got without being like rotating around the specialties, I got the equivalent competencies to have completed CMT. I then started a job at registrar level in care of the elderly. Then the pandemic hit. So I didn't really get long in my post before the pandemic hit. I had just over a year. I really enjoyed being an SHO. I didn't really enjoy being a registrar. Like, it was, you were making decisions, which is fine because you're trained to make decisions, but I feel like I preferred being more like on the shop floor and kind of like working closer with the patients and the relatives. And around this time, so just after I started my registrar post, I also took up a teaching job. So I was teaching first year medical students, and this was just 2 afternoons a week that I was teaching. Then as the pandemic went on, I was like,
I'm not thriving in this atmosphere at all.
So I actually left my clinical post and I managed to increase my teaching time. Then when the pandemic had settled down a bit, I felt ready to go back into clinical work, and I did some locum shifts at a hospital near me through a locum agency, and it was fine. Like, the shifts themselves were okay, but the issue with going through a locum agency is you're going through like a middleman. So I'd tell them like my availability for shifts, and then I wouldn't hear back, and then I'd ask them and they're like, oh no, the shifts have gone. So it wasn't the best, but it was good to get sort of back into clinical work. Then I increased my teaching work because I have a mortgage. Like, I have a house, I need to pay the mortgage. And at the same time I did a master's in sports and exercise medicine because it was something I was really interested in, and I was like, I have space in my career to do it now. Like, it was full on because it was 40-hour weeks for the master's, and then I was teaching 30 hours a week as well. So there were full on weeks, but I did really, really enjoy it. And then since finishing my master's, I now work clinically in a locum setting. I'm due to start another clinical job in the community later this year, and then I still teach 2 days a week, but it's 2 full days a week. So that's my like overview of what my medical training has been. So I haven't had any formal training past F2. I've done similar competencies and I've stepped up to reg level, but I've not done like the specified sort of like training program. So my balance at the moment is, as I've said, 2 days a week teaching at the university. However, I only teach during term time, so during the holidays I can then go travelling. So we're paid equally throughout the year, like primary and secondary school teachers would be as well in the UK, so that you get a steady income all the way through the year, so that even when I'm not at work during the holidays, I can then like still pay my mortgage and beautiful things like that. Because we're teaching medical students, we need to remain clinical, so this means still having contact with patients. So when I'm in the UK, I either take up locum shifts at a hospital, or I'm starting this new job in the community as well. So because my only fixed contract is with the university, this is how I travel. Woo! So I have a postgraduate certificate in medical education, which I got through the medical school that I graduated from and that I now teach at. And that has enabled me to have the flexibility to go traveling. So I don't have a partner, I have no intentions of getting a partner. I don't have kids, I have no intentions of having kids. So I don't really have any like responsibilities outside of work, so that when it is the university holidays, I can go traveling. So this is what has become to be known as a portfolio career. And so this just means not just doing one thing like graduating GP school or GP training and then just being a GP for the rest of your life. People are doing bits and bobs of different things, and it gives you the flexibility to not do the same thing every day, but also gives you the flexibility to do different things that you like. Like, for example, I get a lot out of doing exercise, so I run about 4 times a week, I go to the gym twice a week, and if I was working full-time hours on a doctor's contract, I wouldn't be able to do all that. 2 things that you need to bear in mind, however, when you've got a portfolio career, you still need an annual appraisal. So this can be with the trust that you're working with. When I was with the locum agency, they did the appraisal through the locum agency. When I wasn't working clinically, when I'd left my clinical job and hadn't started locuming, I used the appraisal company Metsu. It's not cheap, but I got an annual appraisal, so that was helpful. So in your annual appraisal, you need to have continuing professional development activity, you need to have reflections, any patient contact, you can reflect on any case-based discussions you've had. You'll need a 360 at some point as well, so feedback from colleagues, feedback from patients. And then once every 5 years you have a revalidation. So a revalidation is where they look at all your previous appraisals and see if you can keep your GMC number, essentially, so keep being a doctor. So you need all of those appraisals to be able to then have your revalidation. So you need to, even when you're locuming, bear those 2 things in mind. You need an annual appraisal, and every 5 years after you have your full registration, so at the end of F1, you need a revalidation to keep your GMC number. So I think that's all I have to say on the matter. So I really hope that you are able to take something from this. I do get asked, how do you manage to travel if you're a doctor? Are you not working all the time? Well, no, I'm not, essentially. I personally find this is the best balance for me. I don't have like many expensive outgoings.
Apart from travelling, obviously.
Like, I live in a 2-bed terrace house. My hobby is running, and it costs like £30 a year to be in a running club. Trainers, like, I probably get like 3 new pairs of trainers a year, and like I shop in Aldi. I don't really go out to eat, so I have like very cheap hobbies, which obviously helps. So that's what I'd advise. It just depends what your priorities are. If your priorities are having a massive house and like a really fancy car, then that's your priorities. But my priorities is traveling the world and seeing as much of it I can. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.